4th of July has just passed, and if you're watching this video, you're likely sitting a little bit heavy with inventory levels right now. Your major units are much higher than what you're comfortable with. Maybe you're even a little bit nervous about how the season's going to end, how you're going to move that inventory, making some hard decisions on what your order is going to look like for 2024. I'm sure the manufacturers are pushing a little bit more on you than what you're comfortable. But what I wanted to share with you, I wanted to expand on what I talked about in a recent boating industry article. I'm not sure if you saw it, but I wanted to give you 6 things to consider as we go into the back half of the season to make sure that you finish off strong. The first one is, I've talked to a lot of dealerships this last 2 months, something that's fairly unusual to be talking to dealers in the heart of the season. But what they're telling me is they're saying, hey, Matt, the bad habits that we're seeing from our sales team are really slowing us down. Not only has the market changed and everything else, but just the habits that were developed during the pandemic are our experienced salespeople that have been with me for a decade. They're suffering. The new guys that we brought on in the last 5 years, they certainly have fallen prey to some bad habits. So be aware of that and look at your team and say, hey, what can I do to improve some of those bad habits in follow-up, in closing skills? You know exactly what I'm talking about. And one of the biggest bad habits we're seeing is the salespeople have become more order takers. They're not asking for the sale. They're not overcoming objections. They're working the general manager and the sales manager and the owner over on price discounts more than building value with the consumer, with your prospect. These types of things are really causing a challenging sales environment to becoming really missing big numbers for the dealership and for their personal sales goals. So again, working with your team with some sales training, with some coaching, with just making them aware of, hey, did you realize that you didn't ask that family to buy? You didn't ask them to put a deposit down or to take the next step. Hey, do you realize that you're working me over on price more than you're building value with the customer? And even just acknowledging it and getting some training, which is another thing that people have hired me for. I've had a top 100 dealer up in the Northeast that's hired me for the 3rd time this year to work on different projects. The what we started in the winter went really well. They hired me in the spring during boat show time, and now they've hired me for the next 12 months to work with their sales team because of this exact reason, the bad habits and the order taking. And it's been challenging, but we're having some breakthroughs with them because as a salesperson myself, I've sold boats nose to nose, toes to toes. In '09 is when I started, and it was a challenging environment. So I know what's going on, and I know how to talk to them. I know how to work with the sales team to get some breakthroughs that sometimes the sales managers and the dealers have a challenge because of the relationship that they have. Being an outsider can be a serious advantage, even if I'm saying the exact same thing. But thinking about how can I approach my sales team to address the bad habits and get them to be closers and not order takers can be very valuable. Another thing that as a dealership owner, you may not be big into marketing. Marketing and sales is what I study. I've been studying it for decades. I really enjoy it. And in today's market, the demand has gone down. We all know that. Supply has gone up. You see that sitting on in your showroom floor right now, which means that we have to be smarter marketers. We can't just sit back and do the same thing that we've been doing for the last decade, and certainly what we did during the pandemic. We didn't have to do much marketing during the pandemic, but putting listings out on the listing sites, doing some basic digital marketing, maybe Facebook ads or Google ads, display ads, and just sending them directly to our website or to inventory pages. They just aren't working anymore. They're not working at a level that's profitable anyway, and they're generating fewer and fewer results, becoming more and more expensive. And even if you're using some companies that specialize in digital marketing, or you got a local digital marketing company, my guess is the results you're seeing are getting less and less exciting, maybe even disappointing. And that's because they're using the same old techniques that have been used for decades. Consumers are changing. The marketplace is changing. I've been sitting in a position during the pandemic where I talk to and communicate with between 200 to 400,000 boat shoppers and boat buyers a month. And I've learned a tremendous amount about how they're shopping, where they're shopping, what they're looking for, what kind of questions they're asking. And I've adjusted and tweaked and add some new systems to our arsenal for our clients that are allowing them to be smarter. Now, one way to be smarter is to be unconventional in your approach. if you're doing the same thing everybody else is doing in the marketplace when it comes to marketing your boats and your boat business, what's going to happen? As the pie shrinks up, your piece of pie is going to get smaller and smaller. Now, we know in our guts, we know in a minute, but we're going to see dealerships go out of business in the next couple of years. It's just poor cash management, not keeping up with the way the consumers are buying. One of them is a decision that you have to make is, am I going to keep doing the same thing that I've been doing for the past 10 years to market my business? Or am I going to be a smarter marketer, and am I going to do something different than other dealers are doing? Now, if you follow what the 20 group is telling you to do, if you're following what you learn at Dealer Week, and you're not doing something different than what the industry is doing, the industry standard, well, you can expect to get standard results or less. That's if you do it great, you can get standard results, but probably less. What we've discovered here is that being smarter, oftentimes being unconventional. Now, I'm not talking just crazy and wacky, although sometimes that can work. I'm talking about doing something that looks very similar to what your competition is doing, but doing it in a different way. It's really amazing when I start working with new dealers and I say, are you doing this? And they say, yes, absolutely. And then they show me what they're doing, and it's night and day. Similar concept, similar strategy, but the execution is vastly different. My execution, unconventional and effective. Their execution is the same as everybody else, which means they compete in the same world, the same, it comes down to price. It comes down to who can discount the most or give away the most with the deal. That's no way to run a profitable, strong, stable boat business. And we've put together these two, unconventional and smarter, in our marketing techniques so that you can generate better opportunities for your sales team. And when your sales team does a better job with those opportunities, that means that in this strange time that we're entering into right now, this challenging time, you have the opportunity to actually increase your market share, increase the piece of that pie as that pie is shrinking. It's something that is going to lead to be some major winners and some major losers. I want to work with those winners that are saying, hey, let's grow the piece of the pie by doing smarter, more unconventional things. Now, when I say unconventional, one of the approaches that we use is we say, hey, what hidden sales are available in the dealership currently, where we don't need to go out and find new prospects, but what sales are we not getting because we're not approaching the prospects or approaching the past clients in the right way? It's one of those things where being unconventional and doing two things that seem very similar but get drastically different results. If you think about it, as a consumer, when they look at a fiberglass boat and they see this one is $75,000 and this one is $100,000, in their mind, they say, it looks exactly the same. It's a 22-foot boat with a 4.3 liter in it. Why is there $25,000 difference? Well, to the expert mind, you can say, well, let's look at this. Let's look at all these little details, and that's why this $100,000 boat is worth $100,000 and this $75,000 boat is only $75,000. That applies to the actual details of your sales and marketing strategy. It's something that is what I focused a lot on is let's do the things that get results, even if they're a little bit different. And let's find those hidden boat sales that are already in your dealership. I can guarantee you, even though we've just come out of the pandemic, I can come into your dealership and with a couple of easy strategies, I can get an opportunity for your salespeople to sell another boat that they wouldn't have had otherwise. Those are the hidden opportunities that I want you to look for. It's something that we really specialize in. And probably the most exciting thing that we've cracked during the pandemic are getting access to the unknown buyers. Now, these are buyers that are out in your local marketplace looking to buy new, used, consignment boats, and nobody else in the industry even knows they're out shopping because they're behind their computer, they're sitting on their lazy boy, just researching online. I mentioned I talk to 200 to 400,000 boat shoppers a month right now, and I have been for the past, since 2020, when the pandemic hit. I've been focusing on how do we find more of these unknown buyers. I've cracked the code, and it's something that can give your dealership a tremendous advantage Imagine if you could find these consumers that are thinking about buying a boat before anybody else knows they exist. If you can communicate with them while they're in that research and evaluator process, as I talk about in the educational spectrum of a boat buyer in my book and in the boating industry articles, if you can do those things and nobody else knows they exist, how big of an advantage will that give you as a boat dealership? Selling new boats, faster turn times on used and consignment boats, the ability to hold margin better and to close easier because you are doing it in a different way than everybody else, and you've built that relationship, and that's given you an advantage in your marketplace. If that's of interest to you, if you're, hey, I'm willing to address the reality of our situation that we probably have some opportunities with our sales team. If you're willing to do something different, unconventional, that's going to get better results over the long haul, and if you would like to get more of the sales that are in your dealership already that you're just not taking advantage of, total lost opportunity, and get access to those unknown buyers, it probably makes sense for us to have a conversation. Now, I'm not sure what we're doing is right for you and your dealership. I don't know you. I don't know anything about your dealership. So here's what I recommend is let's get on the phone. Let's have a conversation. I'm going to ask you some questions about your dealership. You ask me any questions that you want. And at the end, we'll decide, hey, does this make sense for us to work together in some capacity? If it does, great. I'll lay everything out as to what we're doing over here and how it can work for you. If it doesn't, I'll give you a strategy or two during the conversation that will help you take advantage of some opportunities that, as I see it, for your dealership. And that way the call is valuable for you regardless. So if that's of interest to you, go ahead and click that button. I know we're in July right now, but if we start right now, if we get on the phone and have this conversation now, I can work with you in let's make sure we finish up 2023 as strong as possible and move as much inventory as we can so that after Labor Day, we can really dive in and start positioning you and your dealership for a good, solid 2024 and beyond. So that's what I look forward to talking to you about. Click that button, grab a 20-minute spot, and we'll talk to you real soon.